I'm not Jewish. So what would you say, because you talked about how you think it's very important for people who aren't Jewish to also understand the religion. So as someone who doesn't practice Judaism, what would you say are things that should be educated about?
Great question. And it's interesting because while Judaism is pretty unique in not trying to proselytize, you know what I mean by that, go out trying to, missionize people and get them to convert, there's a deep Jewish conviction that every human being on this earth has a unique, irreplaceable purpose. And so the Jewish people in Judaism is a purpose for Jews, but non-Jews also have an equally important role to play. And another thing that's different, I think, that makes Judaism quite unique to certainly of the monotheistic religions, is we don't believe salvation is only achieved, let's say, through our religion or our way. And in fact, on that particular point, that's actually probably one of the biggest messages that Judaism has for the world, which is that most religions are focused on salvation. They're focused on, I'll do this in order to get to heaven. But the big revolution of Judaism, which in some ways has been lost throughout the generations, was that the message of Judaism is not that human beings need to get to heaven, it's that God needs to come down to earth. And heaven wants to come down to earth, and every human being has a unique role to play in achieving that. One of the things that seems to have happened in recent centuries, I don't know where it began, I can try and make some guesses, but one of the things that's happened is that religion has turned our relationship with God into a situation where we are the needy, vulnerable ones that are in trouble and need to get to heaven, and God is the one who needs nothing. So he loves you and he wants you to serve him, but if you don't, well, you can burn in hell, right? Whereas that's just toxic and abusive. Judaism says, hold on one second, if I love you or if I need you, that means I'm in some way vulnerable to you. So if I love you and you don't love me back, am I going to say, well, burn in hell, or am I actually going to suffer myself? If you really love someone, they're not in your life, you are the one that gets hurt. So the big revolution of Judaism was to say, actually, you're here because of God's need for you. And the Jewish people were meant to be sort of leading the voice of God in transmitting that value to the entire world. That's actually in many ways what Passover was all about. That's when their mission began. But the mission and the message was to say that you are here because you're needed to make this world more divine. And that actually makes a lot more sense, because we often think of God as this needless being. He's perfect, he's all-powerful, he's all-knowing, and that's great. But if you create something, if you create a world, how does it make sense that I'm suddenly the created being? I'm the one with all the problems. I'm the one with all the needs. Surely it makes more sense to say, if you create, you do that because you have a need for something. You're after something. And you can't make human beings the ones who are needy. Actually, we're the ones who are needed. So that's, I'd say, one of the biggest messages. There's also very much a belief that non-Jewish people, I don't know if you're familiar with the word mitzvah, which is means a commandment or a need of God for human beings to fulfill. And Jewish people say non-Jews have mitzvah commandments just as Jews do. Jews have more ritualistic ones than other ones, but there are ones that apply to they're called the Noahide commandments. So you can look them up, but they include things like, not breaking marital covenants, looking after animals properly, all kinds of immorality, like not murdering, not worshipping idols, all these things. But a way of also understanding it paradigmatically is to think about in terms of the relationship of the Jewish people's role and non-Jews' role. The Jewish people's role they've been given more commandments and more requirement to learn the Torah in order to bring that voice out of God to the world. But the role of the non-Jews, and you could describe that as sort of trying to bring God's voice into the world, to bring heaven earthward. The role of non-Jewish people is to bring earth heavenward, which means to better this world in a way that makes it more comfortable for human existence, that caters to human beings' needs, that can make this world more livable for all of us. And one of the things that sometimes people, in this day and age, equality is a very cherished concept and word, and we try to bring as much equality to the world, but actually Judaism teaches that on the one hand, while we're all equally necessary, there's actually a great dignity in us all having difference. Because if I'm different to my fellow man or woman, that means I have a unique contribution to give to the world. And so even within the Jewish people, there are specific roles. There's the Kohanim, who are the priests, there's the king, there's the various different tribes, and they all have different roles. And so the same is true of all the nations of the world. All nations and every single human being has a unique role to play. And the way to determine what is your unique role to do in trying to bring more goodness, more comfort, more ease to the world, to better it, is simply to look around and say, who needs me? That's your mission, basically. What am I needed for? Who in my immediate vicinity needs me? And then once you've taken care of that, well, then you can go bigger and bigger. And when you ask those questions, you also look at, okay, what tools have I been given? What skills have I been given? What talents have I been given? And then how can I use those in the best way possible to... And what this is really described as a partnership with God. The Jewish message is God wants to partner with human beings in perfecting this world. And so I think that's a really healthy and paradigm-shifting way of understanding religion, because it's also more logical as well. I think when human beings think of themselves as needy and vulnerable and in trouble, it just depresses us. And part of the reason for that is because it's actually not true. Because if you didn't ask to be born, then how can you suddenly be needy? I don't know if you guys heard about this guy in India who a few years ago tried to sue his parents. Do you hear about this?
Yeah, but he was like, it was only for like it was like for not that much money or something.
I don't know how much money it was for, but you know what his complaint was? He said, I'm suing my parents for giving birth to me without my consent. That was his complaint. And he took him to court. He said, well, I never asked to be born. Why do I suddenly have to get a job and pay a mortgage and go to school like that? I never agreed to this. Unfortunately for him, his parents are lawyers. And they managed to get him to throw it out of court because the parents said, okay, you never asked to be born, but neither did we. So go to the grandparents. And they said, well, I didn't ask to be born either, right? No one ever asked to be born. Now, okay, they threw it out of court, but if you think about it, he's actually got quite an interesting point. If I didn't ask to be born, how can I suddenly be so needy? Or rather, why must I do anything? Why do I need to get a job? Why do I need... Oh, well, you'll suffer. Okay, I'll suffer. But don't tell me I need to. Maybe I'll choose to suffer, right? So it's actually, there's a profound truth here, which is that human beings did not need to be born. It was not out of our need. So then you're left with two options. Why am I here? Why am I here taking care of all my needs and other people's needs? Two options. Number one, there is no reason. The universe is an accident. In which case, well, I've got to take care of my needs, and it can sometimes, if it's easy, then great. And if it's burdensome, well, why should I do it? Well, there is no ultimate reason. Or alternatively, there's a creator. And if he did it out of his need, then why should I live? Why should I go about my life trying to take care of my needs and everyone else's needs? Because that's what's needed of me. Because I'm here, because I'm needed. So most religions seem to be telling people, perhaps with the exception of Buddhism actually, you are needy, God needs nothing, and you better do what he says, else you're in trouble. The revolution of Judaism, as far as I understand it, is to say, actually, you don't need anything at all. Because you don't even need to be here. So why are you here? Because you're needed. And that, I think, it's a slightly rambling answer, but I think it's probably the biggest paradigm shift that Judaism gave to the world that in some ways has been lost. But I think it's an important way of looking at reality. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.